Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Hello friends, welcome to another episode of Nick Nack Goes to the Movies, where we give you marvelous memories and maybe, just maybe, a neat factoid or a smile once in a blue moon. Well, in case you couldn't tell from the wordplay, as well as the recent release marquees, I am indeed talking about the latest MCU thing. No, not Marvel's What If, a show that I still have mixed feelings on, and I still haven't felt like getting back into Loki for an episode double dose dive in. So instead, I indeed went to the movies to see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. If Spider-Man Far From Home was the Infinity Stone saga epilogue, and Black Widow was a very overdue solo outing that takes place way in the MCU past at this point, this movie was the first real full feature-length outing post-Endgame stakes that was neither a Disney Plus show nor a continuation of a previously introduced character or characters. This was our first new hero to join the fight, and it was also the first time this character was even introduced. No real mention outside of a few name drops to the Ten Rings organization, last mentioned in Iron Man 3 way back in 2013. So I was pretty excited to see this, maybe more so than Black Widow, purely out of incredible curiosity of what direction Marvel movies were going next. Yes, we know multiverse things in Kang are on the way, with TV show storylines being more important than ever to the MCU. But like the Eternals soon to come, Shang-Chi was a new and uncharted direction for the comic movie moguls that we will now dive into together. Massive spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution into these uncharted waters. So, you know the way we do it on this show. We dive into some actor things before we get into the meat and gravy of our episode. So with this being a whole new corner of the MCU to explore, I mean, we've seen San Francisco a few times in the Ant-Man franchise. Gosh, I hope there is some togetherness with Shang-Chi and Scott Lang in the next installment of Ant-Man. But for the most part, this is a host of new characters. Simu Liu is the main character protagonist. The most known of these actors for our younger listeners will probably be Awkwafina, who we just talked about in Raya and the Last Dragon, another Disney Dragon movie. How about that? A lot of actors are known for their stunt work in this movie, and that for sure had a hand in their casting. But someone I really want to talk about, which should be the biggest overall name, is Michelle Yeoh. Yes, she had a brief MCU cameo in Guardians 2 in that end scene with a lot of quick blink and you miss it characters. Fun MCU fact. But you will probably know her from either Crouching Tiger or Hidden Dragon, the worst or second worst of the Mummy movies, depending on where you put that Tom Cruise one, and from Tomorrow Never Dies. Gotta throw a Bond movie name drop in there, as the time is thankfully almost up for our final Daniel Craig movie, No Time to Die. I cannot see that I've seen a Tony Leung Chau-wei film or anything like that before, but his portrayal may have been one of the best MCU baddies in a long, long time. And it wouldn't be an MCU movie these days without some MCU faces from the past. Benedict Wong and Ben Kingsley both reprised their roles in some meaningful and hilarious sometimes way. Tim Roth had a super brief voice role reprisal. Thankfully, we have stopped sweeping that movie under the rug. Marvel's What If also revisited the '08 Hulk movie that will get a little deeper and more love into the She-Hulk show, seemingly. The end credits also have some really good deeper MCU ties that are super appreciated. Lastly, Ronnie Chang from The Daily Show. While his role was small, it was hilarious and very much appreciated. For the most part, this movie really nailed the balance of humor and action that at times Marvel movies have leaned in too much to humor, as you may have heard on my MCU deep dive episodes. Check those out if you haven't heard them yet. So, now that we have the who's who of actors out of the way, let's talk about this movie as a whole. So to kick things off, I love this movie starting in the far past, like Captain America before it, but way more in the past. The most recent movie like this that I've seen has to be, I don't know, like the Mortal Kombat movie. That was another one of those lovely HBO Max releases. I will for sure be seeing the next one of those in theaters and who knows how many more they make. I like this period piece a lot, and using this magical artifact. Magic is clearly a big part of the MCU now, post Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch, and embedding magic into this history the MCU continues to tell. That is part of the fun of this timelines. When the screen flash forwarded to 1996, I was trying to think what else in the MCU happened around that time. We know 2008 is kind of the main kickoff point for the MCU, but we had Carol in the 80s, Cap in World War II, and early S.H.I.E.L.D. things with Hank Pym. So much history with 25 movies and counting, along with a ton of other extended external media. There's shows, there's comics, there's so many more elements involved. I like that this movie forgoes a love story for our main character and instead makes that family movie that has trauma and grief, my favorite movie themes. But the love story here between Zhu Wenwu and Ying Li, coming from a hunt for power to this elegant fight dance. Look, so many parts of this movie are just beautiful. Like the visuals, and more importantly, all the fight choreography for me is just stunning. And this movie kicks off with so much of both that you really know what you're in for. It's a nice story of redemption, starting anew and raising a family, but like the X-Men movies continue to do with Magneto. A little bit McKellen, but a lot with Fassbender. Even like a good Western kind of does that same redemption arc. A genre that is far too sparse these days. I think of maybe Hell on Wheels, but really not a whole lot of recent things in the Western world. The universe in these movies doesn't always let someone escape their past. And this moment of the death of a wife and a mother shoots the trajectory of the remaining 3 family members to all sorts of messed up places. I really do love Tony Leung's portrayal of a tortured soul who only knows one way, and once traumatized by his wife's deaths goes like hardcore instructor lifestyle to make his child warrior soldiers and becomes, the main villain. But unlike many Marvel movie villains, he's just a man, with a really cool villain gimmick. The 10 rings are super cool as magical fighting armbands. And like everyone has a little thing, right? Even the worst of the MCU villains has a gimmick. But what he has that a lot of them don't have are these motivations that are like mad relatable. And it helps that he's a person, not just some creature. And like when I think of these motivations, they're mad relatable. Not unlike Killmonger or Vulture before him. He really is one of my favorite villains from the MCU in ages. He has a personality. It's easy to sympathize with him, and gosh darn it, there is so much good in this movie. I love this older epic story we are being told. Once again, similar to the start of the Mortal Kombat reboot, which, while much more violent, after the really serious historical looking beginning, that movie takes a much goofier turn, even with the saw blade hats cutting people in half. It's somehow, Mortal Kombat's a much sillier movie than Shang-Chi could ever be, but that's of course true to the source material of the video game in Mortal Kombat, which it tells to bring out there. So when this movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, does move to the modern day, of course we get a fake out to think Shang-Chi is another man of money in the MCU, something that we've seen for ages. So it's a nice, fun turn to show that he's just some guy, hiding his lineage and parentage and importance, much like Danny Rand in the Marvel Cinematic Netflix universe, the MCNU for short. Well, until everything gets thrown into a blender after Spider-Man and the Multiverse of Madness and Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe and everything else, including the kitchen sink. That movie is going to be sick. But the Danny Rand one, his, version of this story that did come before Shang-Chi, it never really felt right. I still haven't seen season 2. Season 1 for sure left some things to be desired. The Shang-Chi Awkwafina platonic friendship is fun. Sometimes the jokes between the two are a bit cringe, but for the most part they hit. I definitely enjoyed the late night karaoke diversions. And the beginning did give us a few nice hints at a skill set for Awkwafina as a skilled driver and making her important to the plot and not just a comedic diversion. And her driving quickly comes to play in our first modern bus fight scene. Yes, it was teased a ton in the trailers. there's always that question of, if you watch the trailers too much, do you really know what's going to happen before you even see the movie? Up and down to think if that's true or not. But it for sure still looked amazing seeing it in movies versus all the trailers. The fight choreography and the bus set piece was really fun. Yes, I kept wondering if there was going to be a subtle Ant-Man nod. I mean, how perfect would it have been to get a quick onlooker shot of Michael Pena and or David Dastmalchian just coming off his still fantastic The Suicide Squad role as Polka Dot Man. But having either or both of them see this huge bus fight going on, I can picture it now in my mind, and gosh, that would have been glorious. But there was so much action overall in this movie, and I was here for all of it. And they had some good jokes and deeper plot lines with emotional takes throughout that made this movie like a triple threat. Now, one of the few groan-worthy moments had to be there's this prolonged Awkwafina name tirade about changing Shang-Chi's name to Sean. It was like a fun joke in the short term, but the prolonged conversation about it dragged it on just a bit too much. Thankfully, they gave her character more and better short jokes throughout the movie, and once again, gave her something to do. I was nervous in that moment that they were going to just not have anything for her to do throughout the movie other than just tell long-winded, okay jokes. Now, the Underground Fight Club was also teased. Heck, this was our look at Wong and Abomination, and this movie having those MCU ties, and that did not disappoint. Seeing Wong actually take down Abomination was a sight to behold, and I think there was other things. I think there was maybe an Extremis thing. Apparently there's a Black Widow in this movie somewhere, which I have to imagine was somewhere in the fight. So apparently you may have to dive in deeper to all the different arena fights and see what other MCU things you can come up with. Now, not seen in the trailers was Ronnie Chang, who really was so much fun as the Underground Fight Club assistant. His personality shined through early on. And his end moment, too, was just fun. These Daily Show people somehow continue to end up on MCU movies. Trevor Noah had a brief voice role in Black Panther as well. Now, having Shang not be an only child and having his sister revealed through present and past and pitting them together and against each other in this, ring was kind of a interesting way of dealing with grief and trauma. But overall, just wonderful storytelling. The amount of times the story went back to the past to fill in gaps that we thought we knew were true but weren't fully true was so much better than a linear story narrative thing, which normally I'm very much about, especially with letting go and moving on from traumatic experiences being a core element to the movie itself. You have to go back to move forward. It's like Monopoly. Oh, you roll whatever. Oh, 2 spaces back or whatever. I don't know. I think that's Monopoly. I don't think that's life. I haven't board gamed in a little bit, so my board game knowledge may be a bit lackluster at the moment. And if I guess you want to throw another game verbal play, wordplay in there, there's no way this movie could play all its cards at once. Anyway, this was actually the mainstream movie debut of Mungar Jang as Zhu Xiaoling, who did a lovely job in the role that really wasn't advertised a whole lot. And yes, all the fights around the Fight Club building were once again really good. Trailer looked at for sure, but still looked great. And it was nice to have a few villains have some defining things, such as Razor Fist, who was the same actor as I haven't seen it, but I guess Creed 2 did a Drago. He's the Drago. And a super cool masked character, Death Dealer, who does, the actors does all their own stunts. They were doing them on the red carpet. Super cool. And, this character was kind of the visage of Shang's past trauma. And they build it up a lot. But, those fight scenes were just... The fight scenes in general were just so cool. With Disney Plus putting All Hail the King, the MCU one-shot up, you knew you would see Ben Kingsley again. It wasn't advertised, but you knew it was coming. And you knew he'd be back in the role of Trevor, especially how, in case you haven't seen it, the one-shot ends with him in prison. He's hanging out. Sam Rockwell's there too. And eventually he gets interviewed, but in short, he gets captured and is going to be taken back to stand for his crimes, portraying the leader of the Ten Rings organization, the Mandarin, and was going to be dealt with, and it was very fun seeing him back again. And boy, was this something just exciting in the same way that it was fun to see, Zemo again in Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Well, I guess Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but, titles are all different now. But that's what the title was at the time, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Of course, now it is the Captain America. So, Ben Kingsley got the treatment that Daniel Bruhl got in that show. And I know I've talked about, some smack on the Iron Man sequels. I know I don't feel super strong about either Iron Man 2 or 3. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it's justified smack being talked about. I'd still watch them, I think, but there's a difference between those and some of the Marvel MCU elite films. But I enjoyed the fun we got out of Ben Kingsley in the same way. Honestly, I probably enjoyed this guy more, Sam Rockwell in Iron Man 2. Please bring him back. Just anything else, like maybe this Thunderbolts team that is being slowly formed after Falcon the Winter Soldier and Black Widow had a few members to this group. You need your new Iron Man, might as well be Sam Rockwell. But look, Ben Kingsley's character of Trevor, he's goofy, he's dumb. Well, he doesn't have much to offer the team, which, gets you a little nervous for all the jokey things in there. I'm happy they closed the loop a bit for the whole 10 Rings organization that started back in 2008. And while the story is still going to go on, it feels like it's the original story that was started in Iron Man is closed off, even if it wasn't that important in Iron Man, in all honesty. And even with the joke character they, put Ben Kingsley in, they gave him some importance, right? He's a translator for this adorable magic creature named Morris, which is an absolute highlight of the film for me. Now, seeing the Zhu family reunited is also a huge moment, all grown and all this pent-up emotion. And you really do feel for the patriarch of the families, like hearing these voices of the assumed dead wife. I mean, we're pretty sure she's dead, but with magic, anything is possible. And in those magic moments, the trees and leaf wind fighting is cool, but the two hunt for the next Infinity Stones, I'm just kidding, necklace gems, becoming like dragon eyes, and it's all that brought. It was like it became water maps of a moving bamboo forest. Yes, the magic and CGI was everything. I'm a huge fan of the water. I use my Portal app to go to sleep. It's like some nature sounds. I like the water ones myself. Big fan of Portal. If you're listening, let's collab. You help me get a couple more hours of sleep than I normally would. It gets up from up to almost 5-6 hours of sleep, as opposed to probably like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. So let's hook up. Let's connect. Hit me up in the DMs and all that. And I'm still very excited for our latest sound to come up, our latest update. Please hook me up with that. But enough about that. In short, yeah, I'm a huge fan of the water, the sounds of it, pools, whirlpools, hot tubs, etc. And all the water effects littered in this movie, especially in the end credits scene, are exactly what I'm about. Probably another reason I'm all about that Luca movie. Same thing, a lot of the water stuff. I really need to rewatch that again at some point. So, once we get to the magical village, all the, fun, wild and out wildlife, another visual beauty to behold. More magical wonderment in the MCU, a la Doctor Strange, and to a different degree, Black Panther. I mean, we've only been introduced to so many different lands outside of your basic, everyday Earth parts, right? Thor tried. Asgard never really reached the same peaks of, either exciting wonderment of magic or technological wonders, because they try to blend it in the MCU. And you have the magical mirror dimension, the dark dimension, all these other cool Doctor Strange visual spectacles, and then you have all the technical marvels of Wakanda. But Ta Lo was right up there for the living, breathing world, and I think the wildlife was a huge bonus into making it feel like there was a real living ecosystem and group of people and not just a bunch of generic warriors like they did Asgard. Once again, Ragnarok was so good, but Asgard took so long to feel like it was a place that I cared about at all. Now, the other problem I have with this movie, and there haven't been many, is why I love our main human villain. It is the eventual just big CGI monster battle. And, the main dragon, which looked super cool in the trailer, seemingly had moments where it was only strong having a Khaleesi moment of someone riding it, and sometimes it was a self-independent badass entity. Actually, some of these dragon things are, kind of similar with the Great Darkness to Raya and the Last Dragon, of course, having a dragon played by Awkwafina. And actually, I did like the intro to the history of this land and the issue with these really cool wooden carving like storytelling devices. In the same way, not nearly as cool, but still pretty cool as like the intro to Black Panther, having all the moving living metal tell the story. And I think the wood carvings were a really cool way to do it, but just not as good. I think the village was cool, having the armor and weapons all have ties to like dragon scales. Just having dragons in the MCU in general is pretty cool. The eventual costumes for Shang-Chi and Xialing were, the dragon scale thing like everyone else had, but they just looked cool and they didn't look they looked modern, chic, but still, having that dragon scale element to it. Even Awkwafina and Ben Kingsley got some outfits to boot. The army-on-army fight was a lot of high-intensity action fun. Shang fighting his father, and the ring-on-ring combat, extremely cool. The Soul Stealer, Lovecraftian horror monsters, and the big monster fight at the end was a little bit much. And since I've seen Lovecraft Country, I know a thing or two about the genre. Not a ton, but I know what Season 1 and only Season 1, because that show is not having a Season 2, showed me. But a little much here. Nothing can be as over-the-top and good as the beginning of Lovecraft Country, must be said. There was so much good, and the last third action set piece, the creature battle between the two creatures was just a bit much. I was really hoping for the creature story to be more Aquaman reminiscent, and I know that had a lot of things flying around too, but hear me out. I'd rather this thing have a voice, give our hero some big test or inspiration and power, and then have it help in a fight, but have that fight not be against two big behemoth monsters. But this shadow door was going to be opened at some point. It's the Chekhov's gun principle that we bring up every time on here. If you see a big magical door and you see that, this dark demon, you better watch out for it, it's probably going to fly up in the sky at some point. Now, all the battles, even the CGI dragon and Cthulhu knockoffs, aren't bad. They just detracted a bit for me. Worse CGI battles at the end have plagued movies. I'm still waiting for that air-cut justice to add the Joker and maybe Steppenwolf to the end conflict of the movie and not just what we got, unfortunately. Now, back to our human villain, because I don't have a lot of love for the CGI villains as much. But it was a really nice moment to have, this dad who was had his heart hardened in that very last moment, did a nice, sacrifice moment, and, the redemption arc is kind of fulfilled, and, obviously the fight, a lot of stuff's going on, but even once again, they give Awkwafina something to do combat-wise, and some may say they gave her too much to do with how important she was in the end, but I think it was good growth and depth for her character. And yes, Ben Kingsley had a few more joke moments left at the end, also good. Sam Rockwell needs this too. I will say that till I'm blue in the face. The actual end of the movie, super nice, fun callback to, these friends are calling Shang and Awkwafina kind of slackers. And, they're telling this story about all the stuff they did, and their friends like, oh, good joke, no way is that true. And having a, Doctor Strange portal open up in the back with Wong coming in to gather our latest MCU heroes, perfect icing on the cake. This, of course, leads to some great, deeper MCU nods with both Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Brie Larson, and Bruce Banner, a.k.a. Mark Ruffalo, all feature in the end, trying to figure out what the rings are and how they are somehow maybe a beacon to someone or something. I have huge hopes that Mark Ruffalo was seen as, not Hulk with glasses. He's a human, so maybe Hulk with glasses hopefully will not be a huge presence in the MCU future. We did see he still had the messed up arm, which is probably going to be a while from the snap, probably going to be there. He could easily be more mentory in the She-Hulk show. When I'm thinking about this beacon, you wonder if it has anything to do with Eternals. They're ancients, and this is ancient technology. That makes sense to me. I mean, that's my main thought and guess for now. Obviously, everyone could say it could be Mephisto. The big one they're putting out there is Galactus, who hopefully would get something better after the less than ideal Fantastic Four variant of the character. But the second post-credit, tease, not as deep and exciting in the MCU. One set up the character in the future in the MCU. This set up the second, of our two leads. If we're saying, I guess, I don't know, it depends where you put Awkwafina and Xialing, but it really is just saying the 10 rings exist now under her control. Ronnie Chang is back. The Razor Fist guy is back too. And I did really, once again, another Ronnie Chang moment is always going to be a fun final stint. But all we know is they will be back in some way. I don't know if we have a clear direction after this movie from the MCU forward. And obviously, I think it would maybe be unfair to put all that on this movie. But like we said, as the first movie forward post it all, that didn't really feel tied to everything like Spider-Man's second outing did. You had a little bit of that thought of where it could go from here. I mean, this was great to see that a movie could stand on its own for the most part in a very established Marvel universe and still succeed. Shang now knows other Avengers folks. He's going to get invited to the group meetings, and, he can be included. Maybe that Ant-Man thing will happen. I don't know, but you'll see his character pop up now just overall, and it's nice to add some other folks to this MCU group. That is, we lost a few people in the Infinity War Endgame group, so now we need to bolster the ranks. And that's how comics work. People die. Sometimes they come back to life. Sometimes they don't, but they reload as, they get more characters they can put in there. And, now we know this 10 Rings group exists. We don't know what will happen. If they're good, bad, who knows? But they do exist in some way. They're a little more progressive in their membership, but that's probably the only thing we really know. So what did I think of this in summation? Well, let's take a look at the, MCU list rankings, since, I'm very big on my letterbox rankings and list. The only list I have right now is for the MCU. I should really bolster some of those horror franchises up there as we go. But I think, I didn't know what to think coming into this, but honestly, incredibly happy with this movie. Shang-Chi and the Legend of Ten Rings, 4 stars. A lot of good storytelling on its own. The MCU nods were nice. And the villain was really good. That's such a struggle in some of these MCU movies. Really good villain. Overall MCU list ranking placement. That's going to be the doozy. A lot of movies now with 25 to play around with. Not including miniseries just yet. I don't think we need to. We'll see if I throw those extra 3 into, as we especially get more and more. I'm going to put it right now at 11th of 25. So just out of the top 10. It's under the first Iron Man and Spider-Man Far From Home. And it's right above, really closely with how much I love the Michael Rooker arc of Guardians 2 with Yondu. It's going to be right above that, but really close. So there's my take on the latest cinematic Marvel from, Marvel. What did you think of it as a whole? And where do you think it lands on the pantheon of Marvel movies? Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, that is, until we see what Doctor Strange and Peter Parker do to mess it all up and come bringing all those X-Men movies and Spider-Man movies together, and maybe some Thomas Jane Punisher TBD. I don't think Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider will join the fray, but you never really know. But hit me up. Let's have a chit chat. Let's have a super time talking on social at either Knickknack Movies or Knickknack_IC, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Letterboxd, where you can check out my entire MCU rankings list. I've heard some hot takes about how maybe I have Captain America and the First Avenger just a little too high. But I love me some period pieces, and I love me some Hugo Weaving. Tough to bring that down, but let me know what you think. But as always, cheers. And until next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.